Your Steve Jones Show podcast is loading now. The Steve Jones Show podcast is sponsored by Sunbury Motors, North 4th Street in Sunbury, and Sunbury Motors Kia, routes 11 and 15 in Hummel's Wharf. Sports talk where your voice counts. This is the Steve Jones Show on News Radio 1070 WKOK. Now from the Sunbury Motors studio, here's Steve Jones.
All right, Sunbury Motors, 4th Street in Sunbury. Sunbury Motors Kia, routes 11 and 15 in Hummel's Wharf. You want to always deal with the best. Well, they have the best products, best sales staff, best service department. It's all at Sunbury Motors, 4th Street in Sunbury. Sunbury Motors Kia, routes 11 and 15 in Hummel's Wharf. Our play-by-play call of the day, the Angels get an inside-the-park home run.
Estella skies it to deep center field. Going back to Senzel. He looks up against the wall. Jumps and knocks it down. The ball is on the warning track running. Estella around second. He is going to be waved home. Here's a throw. He will score. Inside the park home run, Tommy LaStella. And the game is tied.
And that was courtesy of the Angels Radio Network last night, as Tommy LaStella hit an inside-the-park home run. Bob Lee has announced he's retiring after 40 years, almost 40 years with ESPN. He's been on sabbatical for the last 6 months. He was there, I think, within I think it's within 5 days of the beginning of ESPN in 1979. So he's been there every day since. You want to talk about a pro's pro who had a standard of excellence, continues to have a standard of excellence, in fact, and was a broadcast journalist. He was not a personality. He was a broadcast journalist. He did a great job of hosting SportsCenter, did a great job as the host of the World Cup, and obviously Outside the Lines has been one of the few journalistic endeavors that we've seen in sports. I mean, there really has not been a lot of great, quote, sports journalism over the years, but Outside the Lines, not perfect. They've made mistakes. But the mistakes they made have not been because of effort. You get concerned that the Bob Lees of the world, are they a dying breed? Because we are in an era right now where the loudest voice attempts to dominate the room. And you ask yourself, is the loudest voice a knowledgeable voice? I know in my classroom, I've talked to my students about this. Look, I know you need to have an ability somewhere along the line to stand out a bit. But how do you stand out? Do you stand out by shouting the other person down? I finally got Sean to calm down on that. No.
Took a while. Sooner or later it was going to happen.
I just knew.
Yes. You kept the faith, and so did I.
Yeah. Yeah, you're a real issue. You're a real issue.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. But at the same time, by being the loudest voice, does that mean you're the most knowledgeable voice? People, I think, are searching not just for entertainment. Look, we want to entertain here. I mean, we're not on here for 2 hours a day and not at least trying to have some semblance of entertainment. You know, that's why we'll kid about Kevin once in a while. It's always like making the suit into some sort of mythical character. But that's what we've done, as part of the entertainment. The vast majority of the time, we're trying to bring on what we think are interesting guests that bring a perspective to listen to. Look, and commentary is something you don't have to agree with. For those of you who loved newspapers at one point, You'd pick up the paper, you'd read the game story. Maybe you'd read a sidebar story, but there was always that one area that was the column. And the columnists, say it's the Boston Globe, might be a Dan Shaughnessy, it might be a Bob Ryan, or in New York, a Michael Lupica, or a Dave Anderson. And that commentary was their opinion. You don't have to agree with it. I've always felt that the single greatest element of commentary was, to me, as to whether it was good commentary, did it provoke any thought? That doesn't mean you have to agree with it. You notice I didn't say you had to agree with it. You may agree with it. There are parts you may agree with, and you may disagree with it. But did it provoke thought? Did it make you sit back and think about something? And that's what good commentary does. Shouting the other person down and yelling and screaming, to me, is not thoughtful commentary. It's just trying to dominate the room. That's to me. That's my opinion. You may disagree with that. But that's how I look at it. To me, once we may throw a one-liner here or there, we may make fun of the suit here or there, whatever. It's all done in fun. There's zero personal about it. But the other 98.8% of the time, we're trying to at least delve into subjects and give some perspective, and we're trying to do it also from a platform, because obviously I'm more inside than other people are. So when I'm sitting there and I'm talking about what the depth chart for Penn State football looks like, I've actually seen the players over and over again, not a glimpse, extended look at the players. So when I can tell you about the pluses and minuses of a player, or the areas they need to improve, or the areas where they're really strong, it's because I've watched it with my own eyes. Same thing in basketball. I'm around it all the time. So you try to bring you're trying to make the strength of the show is not the shouting back and forth part. You're trying to make it so you're trying to deliver some at least semblance of knowledge out there. Now, when it comes to analyzing said game, you may disagree with my analysis of the game. You watched it, so you're more than capable of. But I might be able to add something in because of something I know from talking to somebody, maybe James, maybe Patrick, whatever, that maybe you didn't realize. I might be able to add that as an additional piece.
And you do. I mean, you're in constant contact with the coaches, and not just during the heat of the season. I remember you telling me last week you had a chance to catch up with James, and that's the thing. You want to arm yourself with information to share with us when it's warranted, and with your speaking engagements too. I mean, that gives us a chance as Penn State fans to be equipped with what we know that we can share too.
Well, what's happened within the media is this: there has been cutbacks in media over time. ESPN, for example, how many times have they laid off employees? And they've pared down divisions, cut divisions, felt that they were maybe bloated. Now, sometimes that comes from Disney. Remember, what was that George Clooney movie, Wonder World, or what? Wonderland?
Wonderland, yeah.
Okay, that movie lost, I think, $150 million? Did you notice everybody in Disney cut back after that? Because that was a separate division that lost, but everybody else had to feel the pain. ESPN actually had cutbacks in part because of that movie, because they're part of the Disney family. So it wasn't just the movie division that had to cut; everybody else had to do it too. Well, the last time out, they cut 400 jobs. So essentially, ESPN, the magazine, and anybody that really wrote for them, and we've had Dana O'Neill on the show and others who have been with them. I mean, even Jason Stark and Dana O'Neill got cut? They took some of their better, quote, journalists and cut them. We can then debate whether it made them better or not. But what's happened is that now you have, at times, a blurring of the lines. A Bob Lee, so let's go back. Bob Lee, SportsCenter anchor, World Cup anchor, outside the lines anchor. He's always had a pretty defined area where he's been able to work and do his business. Right. Now you've got, for example, where a lot of people have had to cross lines. Yeah, one day you're hosting Baseball Tonight, Carl Ravitch. Next day you're calling a game. You might be called upon to do commentary on SportsCenter. You might be called upon to do commentary. There's a more blurring of lines. And you see that more and more, that there's a blurring of lines. Now, is it a blurring of lines, for example, that I announce Penn State football, Penn State basketball, and then I do commentary on this show? Yeah, it might be. I mean, let's be fair about it, you know. But I also think my doing play-by-play of Penn State football and basketball, I think, also allows me to have a better shot of doing a better job on this show because I get to see more than the average. Doesn't mean in all fairness I can talk about everything I see, because remember, that's also part of it. There are things I see I can't talk about. That it's my deep background knowledge, but there are also some times where I can answer questions as to why something happens. I'll give you an example. Tommy Stevens. When he decided to transfer, I pointed out to the audience, and I did this on a couple of occasions, that Penn State and James Franklin in particular, could not, in my opinion of watching it, handle his situation in practice any better. He's coming off a surgery in December. He had to get himself back. He had to rehab himself. In fact, the one winter workout I went to, I usually try to get to one winter workout a year. So you try to go over there and we get an opportunity. So I went to one winter workout. He wasn't there that day because he was at the doctor. So he wasn't there. Well, in practice, he was doing a lot of shadow work in sneakers for the first 10 days to 2 weeks. Then they got him out there in cleats. Now you're doing this in conjunction with the medical staff. Wayne Sebastianelli is the best in the business. And they got him out there one day in cleats. Then, after he felt comfortable, where the next day that foot felt fine, then they let him be in selective drills. Nothing that involved contact, so he wasn't in any of the, quote, scrimmage or semi-scrimmage work, or the skelly work or anything like that. But every time he was out there, and he did more and more over the final 2 weeks of the spring, Tommy always worked with the first team. Not one time did he take a second team rep. So that's something I could talk about that is a perspective that maybe somebody else can't give you, where you sit back and go, geez, well, what was his complaint? And that's exactly my point. What was his complaint? I don't know what, or what was the complaint of the family? They didn't get a lockdown assurance that he was going to be a starter? Well, there's a reality to this. As much as it seems like common sense that Yetur Gross-Matos is a starter at defensive end, I mean, it's common sense, and everybody who watches Penn State football knows he is. But what if, let's play the total what-if game. What if true freshman Adisa Isaac comes out and is absolutely blows everybody away? Where he's even better. Well, what if that were to happen? Now, I mean, at this moment, is that realistic? No, but I'm trying to give you at least a wild scenario here. Well, they'd have to play him. You've got to play the person that's playing the best. You have to. Now, I'm not. We all know that that's not the case, so I use an extreme case here. But that's why you have competition the first couple of weeks of training camp, just to make sure that the people you think are going to be starting are starting, and you might find somebody that steps up and should be starting. You know, why bother having competition? It's all right. Tommy Stevens, I think, would have proved himself to be the guy to do it. Well, now it's going to be Sean. You know, Sean Clifford's now the guy in that spot. Will Levis will push him, but Sean Clifford will be in that spot. And you know I'm a big Clifford guy. I've watched, and again, you have the advantage. What we don't have the advantage of is that limited game time. There's those peaks and valleys in every game where suddenly you go a couple of series, you get a couple of 3-and-outs. How do you pull yourself out of that? How do you resurrect yourself? How do you operate a 2-minute drill? I'd be saying the same things about Tommy right now. I mean, Tommy didn't have all those series where suddenly he's down in the bottom. He's got to pull himself out. He hasn't had those, 2 minutes to go where I got to put together a drive. I've watched him do it, 100 times in practice, and that's not an exaggeration. But I never watched Tommy one time do it in the game. Same thing with Sean. I've watched Sean do it probably 50 to 70 times in practice. But now I got to watch him do it in the game. So, I mean, there's certain answers we can only get from watching the games. But you have to have the ability. So we talk about, there are going to be times where, yes, there are things I can't tell you, but there are certainly plenty of things that I can tell you and do tell you. So in media today, you've had a lot of blurring of the lines because people have had to try and find ways to make themselves money. So you're seeing writers go on television. You're seeing writers go on radio. Conversely, you're seeing radio people doing TV. So there's, and what's happened is major media companies are cutting down where you need to keep your value by being more of a jack of all trades. Look at Sean. I mean, Sean is on, are you on 3 stations?
That's right. 94 KX, 100.9 The Valley, Eagle 107. And here?
And here's. That's 4 stations you're on. Mm-hmm. So you have to change your mindset every time you do something. If you're doing game night on Eagle 107, your mindset is different than it is doing this show.
That is a completely different element for sure. With 94 KX, you keep it tight right between the songs. It's all about forward motion. Whereas with game night, I literally have to change my delivery, kind of hit the brakes a little bit, catch my breath so I'm not stumbling over my words to make sure I get all the information out on the scores and highlights that people that are looking for when they're driving home after their game at 10 o'clock every Friday night.
So is that a blurring of lines? No, it's what he has to do. It's what he has to do. And that's why when you look at today's media, Bob Lee delivered from a journalistic point of view was not always perfect. I mean, they made mistakes. But he felt that knowledge was the power, that knowledge was the way to draw the audience in, not yelling and being the loudest voice. Knowledge means something. That you can have some fun, you can kid around, but in the end, to me, people are tuning into this show because they think that they're going to gain something by listening to it. In other words, here's a chance to listen to John Urschel. The key for me at that point, am I asking the right questions to make John Urschel's interview more interesting for you to listen to? A Tony Knopp, Dieter Kurtenbach. I mean, you try to bring a wide variety of guests with the idea that knowledge in the end is the power of the show. Not trying to stand out from the crowd and be the loudmouth of the room and suck all the oxygen out, because I think in the end, that's the part that's turning people off to media. Maybe at times this isn't the greatest, most high-powered delivery, but in the end, you can't deny that a lot of times we do have people on that maybe you don't agree with, or maybe you agree with, but you can't deny they don't know what they're talking about. And Bob Lee was always one of those individuals where you always felt like he knew what he was talking about. And his retirement's official as of Sunday, June 30th. We'll come back with more in a moment here on News Radio 1070 WKOK. For nearly 100 years, Purdy Insurance has been your locally owned, family-operated source for insurance products. With a staff of over 20 and partnerships with some of the industry's most trusted companies, Purdy has the experience and resources to get the job done. Whether you need personal, home, and auto, or complex business insurance solutions, Purdy will help you navigate through the process. Call today at 570-286-5855. Or better yet, stop in their Sunbury office to see what Purdy Insurance can do for you. When it comes to car buying, there's the other guy's way, and then there's the SMC way. The other guys force you into a vehicle you really don't want. The Sunbury Motors way lets you take the time you need to browse, ask questions, and take the test drive and think on it. For over 100 years, the Mertz family and all their employees have made your experience the most pleasant one you'll ever have. The other guys won't offer you the best price for your trade, no matter how much they say they will. The SMC way is their promise to provide you with the most money the market shows your vehicle is worth. The SMC way is to offer you all applicable factory rebates on new vehicles and generous discounts. Looking for a pre-owned vehicle? The SMC way checks each vehicle in a 200-mile radius to determine the lowest price, then beat it. It's the lowest price promise, just part of the SMC way. The choice is up to you, the other guy's way or the SMC way. The SMC way wins every time. Sunbury Motors Company in the North 4th Street Auto Plaza, Sunbury, and at sunburymotors.com. Selling more cars and satisfying more customers for over 100 years.
Taking your calls at 800-795-9565. This is the Steve Jones Show on News Radio 1070 WKOK. Now, from the Sunbury Motors Studio, here's Steve Jones.
Sunbury Motors, 4th Street in Sunbury. Sunbury Motors Kia, routes 11 and 15 in Hummel's Wharf. Outstanding product, great sales staff. You get treated really well there. And a service department that is just outstanding. Sunbury Motors, 4th Street in Sunbury. Sunbury Motors, Kia, routes 11 and 15 in Hummel's Wharf. Hats off always to the Mertz family. Well, the NBA and their 75th season is on the horizon. The 21-22 season will be the 75th year of the NBA. Guess what they're considering? Fewer games. How often have we talked on this show, Sean, about idealistically there should be fewer games for professional sports?
Yeah, quite a bit. And we're just trying to rack our brains as to, okay, if this were to happen in the NFL, do you just take preseason games away and add them to the regular season schedule and water that portion down to the lineup, or do you just bag them all together? And how big of an impact will that have with revenue? And we've mentioned that too a lot with baseball. I know you have said, Steve, to trim the season down to from 162 down to about 130.
130.
Yeah, and that's been brought up here quite a bit too. NBA would be interesting. So when you start with 82, you work your way down to what? Maybe 60? Was that the? I don't know if Commissioner Adam Silver had a number in mind.
I've had 60. I've said 60 many times. You want to know what the number is? They mentioned 58.
Wow.
The number of games in a reduced regular season discussed on the conference call ranged from 58, ensuring every team would be hosting the other 29 in their arenas over the course of the season, to a marginal cut of only a handful of games. So maybe they would cut it down to 72. I don't know. They say the wholesale change to the schedule in a little more 2 years' time does not come without major complications. And there's obvious the money part of it. The NBA would need the cooperation from numerous stakeholders. I mean, is ESPN still going to pay $1.4 billion a year? But this is where the NBA does have a financial advantage in its television package. Realistically, the regular season does nothing for them. I mean, the ratings for the regular season are not good, but the postseason, the ratings are really good. Essentially, what ESPN and TNT are paying for, it happens to be product that's on the air, because live sports drives the networks. I mean, live sports, what makes live sports so critical to networks is that they're almost DVR proof.
I think with the NBA, really the only one day in the regular season a lot of people would look forward to is Christmas Day. But that's its own anomaly. What they have, 5 games on the ABC, ESPN platforms, and maybe for me, I would maybe be interested in only maybe one out of those 5 games if you're looking for, a primo matchup between, like let's say Cleveland, Golden State when LeBron was still in Cleveland. I mean, what's it going to be this coming year? Will it be Philly Golden State? Will it be another Golden State Toronto rematch on Christmas Day? Depending on, of course, what Kawhi Leonard's going to do.
Well, if they reduce the number of games, which I think would be smart, do you reduce salaries? Does it affect your TV contracts? Again, because the postseason is the powerful entity in this, I think they might be all right because the postseason really is the ball game in terms of ratings and money and what the networks really want. That's the programming they really want in the end. A midseason matchup on a Friday night between Denver and San Antonio's nice, but it doesn't move the needle very much. Denver and San Antonio then play in the playoffs like they did this year, you're going to have more people watching. So I think they would be okay because they would probably have, according to them, the possibility of some play-in playoff games at the end. And they're also talking about a mid-season tournament. But there is a bottom line. Look at Kawhi Leonard. What did Kawhi Leonard do this season? Kawhi Leonard sat out a lot of games this year so that when he got to the playoffs, he was fresh. And that goes back to what we've discussed many times. How often are we watching games with tired athletes out there? I know it's their job, but boy, the stress on them all the time. It's tough. There's a lot of stress on them all the time. And after a while, I mean, even in baseball, 162 games. Look at today. What's today's temperature? 86? It's going to be, 88 tomorrow? Well, you're going out there. I mean, for example, there are a lot of afternoon games in baseball today. San Diego, Baltimore, Red Sox, White Sox, Yankees, Blue Jays, Colorado, San Francisco. They're out there, Arizona. Now they're playing indoors. Arizona, the roof's probably closed today. But they're out there all the time. That's why Pudge Rodriguez played the vast majority of his career in Texas. Yeah, he played at the end with the Marlins and the Tigers. But he played the vast majority of his career, I think at least 10 years with the Texas Rangers. He'd be out there catching 145 to 150 games a year. And I don't care if you're playing night games. At night in Texas, it can still be 95 to 100 degrees at 8 o'clock at night. And he'd go out there every day and do that. I think you'd get a better product because you'd have a better rested product. Can you keep your media partners in line, and agree with it with you? And can you keep the same salary structure because you know the players will balk at that? you'd end up with a better product, I think. You can start the season a little bit later, have a few more days built in as off days, maybe start the playoffs a little bit sooner.
And we're still a little bit down the road from the NFL television rights negotiations and agreements, that'll happen. So I just wonder how prevalent will that topic be as those agreements really start to kick into high gear as to who's going to get what, and as to if the number of games are going to remain the same.
See, this is where I give the NBA credit. The NBA, I give them credit because at least they're thinking here. Yeah, how often have we heard, like LeBron James? LeBron James needed time off. Okay? And he's, now, I think the last year he was in Cleveland, I don't think he missed a single game his last year with Cleveland. He didn't miss any games. But LeBron James, over the last 14 years minimum, has played more basketball than anyone.
Wasn't it the last year when he was with the Miami Heat? Didn't he and Dwayne Wade go on like a week-long spring break or something?
They should have.
Yeah.
They should have. To be honest with you, they should have. Think about what LeBron James has done in the last 14, 15 years. He has played in the finals how many times? 8 times?
8 straight, yes. Right.
8 straight finals.
Up till this year.
Plus one before that, 9. How many Olympic games did he play in? Well, he played in 4, 8, and 12. So he's out there playing in the Olympics into July or maybe early August, whatever it may be, the timing of it. I mean, he's played more basketball than anybody. You just can't keep going at that level. And I think the NBA at least is smart enough, how many games did Kawhi Leonard play this year? I want to say he played, the number of games he played this year were in the 50s. That's when he got to the playoffs, he was fresh. Let me see. Kawhi. Of course, I got to be able to spell his name. Kawhi Leonard. There we go. How many games did he play this year? Yeah, there's a lot of free agent talk, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, sure.
I see 60.
Yep.
60 games, averaged 26.6 a game.
So he missed 22 games deliberately this year. And in the playoffs, he was fresh. He played 34 minutes a game, which, by the way, is the highest average of his career. For that, 33.1 had been his high number. Or 33.4 had been his high number. This year he averaged 34 minutes a game. His field goal percentage was the second highest of his career. I think that's due in part because they had the legs. I think that's important.
Definitely consistent. I mean, for his career, for field goal percentage, he's at 49.5. And this year with 60 games played, his field goal percentage was 49.6. But I think that had a lot to do with the Golden State Warriors. They just looked completely gassed and the cumulative effect of all the games that they have played over the last 2-3 years.
Also the cumulative effect of all the injuries. So suddenly now to make up for not having, and they lost a lot of guys through free agency. Suddenly Curry had to play more minutes to make up for no Durant. Klay Thompson had to play more minutes to make up for no Durant. Then Klay Thompson got hurt. There are guys actually playing. Draymond Green played more minutes than he should have. LeBron James in his career, in terms of taking time off, okay? He played, I was right. 2 years ago, his last year in Cleveland, he played every game. The year before that, he played 74. 76, 69, 77, 76, 62 in Miami. Now, every once in a while, of course, he got hurt. This year, the Lakers shut him down. He finished with 55. But I think you have to do that.
Yeah, but still, you're playing 74 games out of an NBA season. I mean, that's only on the average of only taking off one game a month.
But it's all the travel. It wears you down.
Yeah, it's still a grind. Absolutely.
I mean, Greg Popovich was right. The only thing about Popovich that I disagree with a little bit, saying as a compromise, and mine was only a compromise thought, that instead of, I think San Antonio was playing at Miami. I think it was their only trip to Miami all season. And so I think he sat Ginobili, Parker, and Duncan. I think that was the scenario. You play 41 games at home. I mean, sit them at home a couple times.
I think when those three were still together with the Spurs, it may have been their last year together or the year before. And it was also when ABC decided to start running Saturday night primetime games. Right. I think they had a matchup against Golden State, and it may have been the night before, or maybe it was just a couple of hours before the game. Pop decided to rest all three of those guys against Golden State. That had to have drove the ESPN ABC suits crazy.
Right. And again, my only thought process on that is that, you've got 41 home games a year. Maybe take 3 of those and rest them at home. But see, this is where the NBA has more progressive thought on the value of rest as opposed to the NFL. The NFL is sitting there saying, "Wait, we got to go to 18 games." The NFL is a brutal 17-week, 16-game gauntlet, and then they want to expand the playoffs by one extra round, by one extra team too. So instead of sitting back and saying to yourself, "Hey, is it possible that less is more?" They just want to keep going more, more, more. And in the end, in December, are we getting a really good product of NFL football? At that point, everybody's banged up. Everybody's hurt in some ways. Maybe not injured, but they're hurt.
See, that's my concern. If you take 2 preseason games and add them to regular season games, I mean, you're going to get a matchup of record of a 5-12 team against a team 3-14. You don't want to see that toward the end of the year, and you may have players by that time mailing it in, just counting down to clean out their lockers.
Well, I you know what? To be honest with you, I hear that sometimes, and I don't believe it because these guys are all fighting for contracts. They're fighting to keep themselves relevant.
I would hope. Sure. Yeah.
But I look at the number of times, especially in the last couple of years, where I've heard coaches lecture their players about rest. And now you've got the business people over and over again saying, "We need more, we need more, we need more." Well, I'm sorry. I mean, is that the best thing for the game, the fan base, and the interest in the game? And I say no. I say rest pays great dividends. And I think the NBA, even though they've got questions, even though they're not quite sure how to work it out, even though they're sitting around the table right now and essentially brainstorming the idea for the 21-22 season, which is their 75th season. So for the 21-22 season, I give them credit for at least broaching the subject. Meanwhile, you got the National Football League saying, "Hey, if we go to 20 games, we would." I'm sorry. Do you want to watch Chad Laletta against Ryan Lindsley in December because the quarterbacks are all out? Is that what you want to watch? That the game you're hyped up to see? I'm not saying the NFL needs to reduce games. I'm saying staying at 16 works. The current playoff structure works. Hockey needs to cut back. If they were to get down to 60 games, even 70 games, build in a little more rest in what is such a physically demanding sport. The NBA, I mentioned 60, but even if they went back to 70, yeah, I know you're losing 6 home dates each to do that, but I think it opens the door for a better product. Everyone marveled at Kawhi Leonard. Well, they deliberately held him out of games. He missed 22 regular season games this year. And in the playoffs, when people really are watching, you saw a relatively fresh guy put on quite a show. And in the end, isn't that what we want to see? We don't want to see people limping to the finish. That's not what makes sports great. You want to see people at the highest level. Rest means something. I know you've got to be able to go out as many dates as possible because more performance dates equals the possibility of more ticket revenue. I've got that. I mean, you just saw Chicago last night, right? How many concerts is Chicago playing?
I can tell you where they are tonight. They are in Baltimore tonight. They take tomorrow off, and then they go out to Youngstown, Ohio on Friday. That's a band that's been together for 52 years, and they're still grinding.
Still grinding, but at the end, how tired are they going to be in this road trip? There's going to be a night they're going to go in, and they're going to know themselves. They just are not. They're just not themselves. They're going to know it. Now, you might not know it. Usually, if you're really good at something, you're the first one to know if you've done it right, and you're the first one to know if you've done it wrong. All right, we'll wrap it up in a moment on News Radio 1070 WKOK. Chicago last night was playing at Spyglass. Sean was there.
A couple thousand of our best friends as well. Phenomenal start to their backyard concert series, and that's going to be a night that a lot of people around here will never forget.
Oh, that's great. That was a great show. Tomorrow, the Phillies and Mets will be on.
Throwback Thursday for the Fightins.
Yeah, and it'll be Chris Elio Day. Salute to him as Phillies fans. As Philly fans thank the Mets for coming to town just when they needed them.
Yeah.
And then back on Friday, Nate Bauer is going to join us from Blue White Illustrated. Today's show's been brought to you by Sunbury Motors, 4th Street in Sunbury. Sunbury Motors Kia, routes 11 and 15 in Hummel's Wharf. Mertz family, incredible all these years, delivering the best products, best sales staff, awesome service department. Sunbury Motors, 4th Street in Sunbury. Sunbury Motors Kia, routes 11 and 15 in Hummel's Wharf. We'll talk to you on Friday. Enjoy the Phillies and the Mets tonight and tomorrow here on News Radio 1070 WKOK.
Your station for news, weather, business, and CBS Sports Radio. News Radio 1070 WKOK Sunbury and on WKOK.com.